Hey everybody, I'm Briana Sallis, president and founder of NextGen YBP West Michigan. And welcome back to our Start Small, Dream Big web series. For those of you that are new, this is kind of a sit-down conversation, one-on-one, interview local change makers, community leaders, to get to know them on an in-depth and real level on who they are and what they do. So this time, I'm very excited to kick off a special edition of this interview series because we'll have some very special guests joining me. And as we head toward the August 5th primaries, I will be speaking directly with South Haven's candidates who are running for mayor to get real answers on the issues that matter to local young professionals, families, and the broader South Haven community. So over the past few weeks, we have asked you, the people who live, work, and care about South Haven, to submit some questions that matter most to you. And today, you'll get to hear those questions answered directly, starting off with our very first candidate in the series, Mr. Joshua Lemmer. Joshua, thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Great to
Yeah,
chat with you.
yes, absolutely. Thank you for making time. I know you're very busy lately, so I want to kick things off just by talking about your story. Can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and what maybe motivated you to run for mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. I try to do this quickly, but I'll do my best. So, I grew up. I live in South Haven, obviously full time now. My husband and I moved here in 2023 at the beginning of the year. I grew up in Bloomingdale, so just down the road from South Haven. Grew up coming to South Haven, going to the beach, just being a part of the community. Had some good friends here, whatnot. Then I went to college on the east side of the state. So I went to Oakland University. From there, thought I was going to work in education for a long time. Had a couple different jobs, one down in Missouri at Truman State University, then up to Chicago, and I lived downtown Chicago working at the school at the Art Institute of Chicago, which was fantastic. From there, I made this interesting and kind of strange jump to working at Target Corporation, which is where I work today. So I've been there for 15 years. I started in stores. I was an assistant manager of the Highland Park Target store, which is in a weird neighborhood. It's actually in the neighborhood where the Home Alone house is.
Wow.
So it has a very like high wealth, but then also a very not wealthy population kind of combining into one. So just a really interesting place to live.
Yeah.
Or I didn't live there, actually, I worked there. Then from that job, I worked in HR for Target. I supported 21 stores in the greater Chicagoland area, which was fantastic. It was such a fun job. I think I had about 20,000 team members and supported their HR teams to, my goal was just to help make their jobs the best they could be, which is kind of what gets me jumping over why am I running. My frame of mind has always been, how can I make the spaces that I interact with the best it can be for me, my family, and those that are also in those spaces. My parents growing up, my mom was a UPS driver. I have two moms. My other mom and dad, they worked at Checker Motors in Kalamazoo, where they made auto parts for GM. Um, so surrounded just by real working people, and just knowing, seeing like hard life essentially. My life wasn't as hard because my parents did a really nice job of making sure we didn't have much, but they made sure that we had what we needed. But my vision has always been like, how do I just translate that and help the spaces that I'm in be the best they can be? So that brought me over to Minneapolis, and now I work for Target still in enterprise risk, and trying to bolster up the brand of the company and making sure that what we're doing out in communities is beneficial to the community, but also beneficial to the brand. There's a bit of both there, because that's real life. We came to South Haven right after COVID. I got approval to work remotely, which was, in my view, a benefit of COVID because it wouldn't have happened otherwise. We had our eyes on Chicago to build a family in Chicago, and detoured to South Haven, and where we were able to buy Inn at the Park, which is an inn right near the Black River down the street from the beach. And then shortly after, we purchased Watersview Inn, which is on North Shore Drive across from the lake, and decided to invest here. My husband worked in hospitality for about 10, 15 years, corporate director of sales. And then so he transitioned very nicely into running these inns, and I still work for Target. Why am I in the mayor's race? Bobby, my husband, he's on the board of directors for Visit South Haven, so he got involved right away. I was planning to run for the Ward 3 council seat to get myself involved. I like how cities operate and how, especially in a small town, just like the ability to come together with a group of people that have similar ideas, not the same, like we all do agree, but similar ideas on like making a space better. And then I actually got a call from someone in the city who said, "Hey, we would actually like Josh if he's willing to switch into the mayor's race." And so I asked a few questions about that. I literally had, Brie, I had 5 minutes before the deadline to get downtown and finish the petition and get it all submitted, and with the help of some folks downtown. And I was like, well, what's the motivation for this? And they know me, they liked what I presented, the energy that I have. And they saw the other two candidates, and I'll try not to speak ill of the other two candidates because I think we all have good intentions for South Haven, but those two candidates don't get along. They don't get along. They're not creating a collaborative environment, and it's just created a lot of stress for South Haven. And I think I can help course correct some of that and get us on the path for a positive future, not just in 2 years, but for the next 20, because I'll be here for that long at least. That was a long answer. I'm sorry. Now, yeah, back to you.
No, it was great. I think the more we can learn about you and how you came to South Haven, the better. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a little bit about the vision that you have. What's kind of the long term
Yeah.
vision that you have for the city of South Haven? And if you were elected, what would be your top priorities in your first year?
Yeah, great question. So I think my vision for South Haven is a place where all of the stakeholders that participate in what South Haven is have a voice at the table. And doesn't mean everyone's going to get what they want, but they're all represented. And I've been using stakeholders very intentionally. We've got resident, and this isn't in priority order, although I do think residents are one of the most important. We've got residents, we've got second homeowners who don't live here, but they have a home here. They don't rent it out, it's just like a home. We have short-term rental investors, we have business owners, and then we have people that vacation here and that come here just to enjoy their free time, and that and save a lot of money to come here, and they just want a good environment to be. So my vision for South Haven is a place that finds balance across all of those stakeholders. Um, what I've seen in the short time that I've been here, 2 years and paying attention before, is where we've made a lot of progress, for sure. There have been some missteps, and we can work on course correcting some of those as we go, and some of that is happening. But we're not really thinking about South Haven 20 years from now. We're thinking about South Haven 2 to 4 years from now. And one of my top priorities is one, let's get a council that works together, that is having healthy debate, and is aligned to the same strategic priorities. But then let's also then build councils that successively work off one another. It's unrealistic for anyone to say, oh, I'm going to be mayor for 2 years and I'm going to accomplish these five really hard things. Like, it's unrealistic. The best that we can do is accomplish some low hanging fruit, and there's always going to be that, and then start to bring it so that the next low hanging fruit becomes available for the next council. So setting up the next council for success. Now, if I'm sitting on that council for 20 years, awesome. Then I can keep doing that and keep working towards it. But if I'm not, then what I would want is in my 2 years in this seat to be, I want my legacy for those 2 years to say, Josh created a strategic vision for South Haven that the town aligned to, the council aligned to, the boards and commissions aligned to, and then they started the work to make that happen. And I think that vision has to be 20 years out or more. Otherwise, we're just chipping away at something that's going to change again in a very short time frame. So that would be my top priority, is kind of aligning to some of those things. I think getting into the details of what does that mean. I wrote about this in one of my posts a while ago. I think South Haven is in a very pivotal spot right now. I think we have an economic situation that's verified from a couple different reports that I've read that you see we're trying to address in the master plan updates. But we're in a spot where housing is unaffordable for young families. There aren't many jobs that a young family would be able to take, and then subsequently be able to afford to live in South Haven. Our teachers often can't afford to live in South Haven. The staff that work at my inns, they can't afford to live in South Haven. And we're in the spot where we're trying to balance short-term rentals, which I think is a smart move. Let's not definitely not get rid of them. We need them. It's a part of our economy, but there needs to be a balance. And as that balance happens, some houses will come up for sale, right? Because investors will be like, hey, this isn't a place for me to invest anymore based on their particular situation. Not everybody. But that means houses will come up for sale. But those houses aren't going to be affordable for young families. They're still not going to be affordable. So then you're going to have folks coming in and buying them as a second home, which is also great, but it's not bringing young families into town. And so I think we need to figure out what is our approach to make South Haven available and enticing for young families like mine, to be able to come here and say, this is where I want to live and I can actually live here. So I think we need to solve that problem. A lot of people talk about, and I know I'm a product of this, but well, let's find people that can work remotely. Which yes, I can work remotely, and my income comes from a whole different place. But that's not a realistic solution. That's not like a long-term answer. So I think we need to look at affordable housing, residential development, and then that leading into job creation and what are these people that are coming here? What are they doing?
Yep. And you touched on jobs, and I think a lot of folks in our community are definitely talking about jobs. And we
Yeah.
had a question from Jordan, actually from South Haven, who asked, "You've said that you want to bring more jobs to South Haven, but what does that plan actually look like? Which industries or companies are you hoping to target, if
Hmm.
any? And how do you plan to position South Haven as a place worth investing
Yeah. If that's the Jordan I know, I can always count on him for a question. And so if that's him, I appreciate it. In the very, very positive way. I won't be the candidate that sits here and says, I'm going to bring a manufacturing plant to South Haven or I'm going to bring this to South Haven. What I will say though is we need to make it enticing and available for someone to start a business here or to bring their business here. And I think that gets into like again that strategic plan. Like where are we going to diversify beyond tourism? Tourism is already here. It's good. It provides a lot of amenities and services to South Haven. Let's not pretend it doesn't, right? But I think there's an opportunity, especially in a town like this, to focus on like healthcare. How do we make this enticing for healthcare facilities? And I'm not just talking hospitals or whatnot, but like light manufacturing, healthcare manufacturing, technology, like those types of industries to come in where this would be an easy place to set up shop and a beautiful place to set up shop, and we would have the people to be able to work in those jobs, which also gets back to housing.
in?
So it's a bit connected. So I think we have to make it easy. And I think, I've talked to one, I am a business owner. I haven't had to make big changes to my businesses, to our businesses with the city. So I haven't had to ask for any exceptions or anything like that, which is great for us. But I have talked to other businesses who have, and they've expressed it's very complicated in South Haven. One even said if they could move their business to St. Joe or Saugatuck, they would do it tomorrow because it's just so much easier to do business there. So I think we need to figure out what that is. Like, what is that about? What is so challenging to run a business, especially if you're trying to grow in South Haven? And how do we maybe identify what the red tape is, and then have a conversation of do we eliminate that red tape, or is that red tape important, and why is it important to our plan? I think we really need to learn on organizations like yours. We've got the South Haven Regional Business Hub. We've got a few, which is an incubator for small business. The new executive director, Elizabeth, just lives down the street from me. We have a phone date coming up, so I'm excited about that. Um, and I know the city gives $8,000 to that hub. And I'm like, really, $8,000? Like, what else can we do, guys? Come on. But I think we need to get into these spaces where it's building entrepreneurship and it's allowing people to maybe apply for grants if they have an idea and try something out and get some good mentorship, and bring like opportunity where people then say, this is a place where I want to try this out and see how it works. And I think we can do that. I think with some of that, like we're working with incubators and working with city, we've got to look at our zoning. We've got to make sure our zoning allows some flexibility for businesses to come in and try some things out. And then I think there's an opportunity to continue to explore the partnerships that we have, with our schools, with our community colleges nearby. We've got some great four-year institutions that we can partner with and just say, hey, what ideas do you have? So I think there's some good opportunity. One thing that I have been thinking about, and sorry, Jordan, I know I'm not getting to your question on like what job will I actually bring here, but but um, uh, thinking about like what's an initiative where and maybe it's like come grow here, come grow at South Haven, and there, it's something that's focused on year-round employment,
Yeah.
where someone can look and say, oh, South Haven's a great place for me to go try this. They've got all these services and amenities that would help me, and maybe we can get some startup industry going, um, things like that, grants that can help people out and figure out where we can get some funding for things like that. But it's all about enticing people to want to come here. I think would probably be the approach that I would take, aligned with a longer term strategic vision.
Love it.
I would love to say, yeah, let's get a factory here, get manufacturing, but they've got to want to come here too, and so we first have to make it available.
Yeah, no, great points. And on the topic of housing, um, Jordan, same Jordan, did ask another question. It's a valid question. It's a great question. So
I'm sure it is, yeah.
when you say affordable housing, because we hear that a lot now, what price range do you actually consider affordable for South Haven residents? And
Hmm.
beyond the Overton site,
Yeah.
where else do you see that kind of housing being developed? And he's also added, there's concern about concentrating all low income housing in one area and the stigma that can come with that. So, how do you plan to address?
Mhm. That's a good question. And there's a lot of detail and nuance in there, so I'll address as much as I can. In terms of like a price range of affordability, I think, well, I mean, a price range of affordability ranges from zero to millions, right? And that just depends on an individual's circumstance. The average family of four in the United States is, I'm going to get this wrong, but I know it's somewhere in the 40 to $60,000 a year range, in an area like ours. So that's a decent pay. But it's not going to buy you a house in South Haven, most likely, because those property values have already gone up, to a lot of extent. There's some ideas of out there of what can we incentivize, where you can allow a homeowner to rent out a portion of their home in line with the short-term rental concepts and all of that. And those are things we can talk about, but even that's going to be limited to a few. Um, so I think it's this, when you think about housing and the economics of housing in general, if you build, the economics of it is, if you build seven multi-million dollar homes that no one can afford except for those seven unique individuals or families, well, that's going to actually free up housing for other people when they move into those homes, right? Assuming that they're releasing a home they already have in South Haven, or they're moving into a home. Multi-million dollars is a bad example because it's too high, but you get the idea. If you build, I was just having lunch at the senior center today, and the executive director, Diane, was sharing with me that they've got a plan in the works that they're waiting on approval to build a housing development on site for 50 units, for senior housing. That's fantastic, and I hope it gets approved and possibly breaking ground next year. Now that's for seniors, right? But then what that could do, again, the economics of it, the cascading, is that means then 50 potentially, we'll just narrow it down to half. 25 seniors are moving out of their homes in South Haven into this facility that's more accessible and friendly to them and what they're trying to achieve with their lives. That opens up other homes for other people, in South Haven, and so there's this cascade effect of like allowing more. When you build more homes, you allow people to flex into the space that they're actually wanting to live in. Right now, across the United States, we're dealing with a situation where people are probably buying a home a size down from what they actually want because it's what's available, right? So if we can get people to buy the home they actually want, then we can free up the homes for everyone else. It's a long shot dream and vision, but that's kind of like how the economics of housing works. Um, but in a space like ours today in South Haven, I think we do need to look at the spaces that we have available. South Haven property values are not going to go down necessarily. And if someone does sell their house, we can't be like, hey, can you sell it for $100,000 less to make it affordable housing? Would you be so generous? Like, that's not going to happen. It's just not that. It's just not the way it's going to work. So we do need to look at like what type of building codes do we have in place that make it friendly and accessible to build multi-unit structures that also, and this is critical, also align with what we're trying to do in the neighborhoods and in the community. So don't take and put like a 21 unit apartment building in the middle of a neighborhood that's all, small cottage single families. Like, that's awful. Let's not do that. But maybe there's a way where we could already have a pre-designed, not prefab, but like most of the code concepts are done, of like, here's a duplex or a series of three townhomes that kind of fit in this neighborhood and fit on that box. And we can make it easier for developers to want to build those if we can dig in and see like what's the issue with why developers are struggling with South Haven and cut out some of that red tape. So I think that's one way to do it. I think another way is, and I want to be realistic about this as I say it, I think another way is working with the township. There is land in the townships. There's land, doesn't necessarily mean it's available to South Haven, but there is land, and we can start to work with townships and partner with them and say, hey, like, hey, how do we make space out here and make affordable homes that people can be closer to where they're working in South Haven or nearby versus driving 50 or 30 to 45 minutes away. There's challenges. Let's be real about the challenges. The challenges of building in townships is our infrastructure from utilities and services aren't all out there. Costs a lot of money to maintain utilities and services outside of the city unit itself. And if you don't use those services, then you have to have a big enough piece of land to support septic and septic systems and things like that. So there's some challenges there, but that is an option that we can look into. I think Overton is a great project if we can get across the final finish line. I know this is the second attempt at that, and we've already had one delay come through, and now there's continuing questions about land contamination that just need to be answered. And so I keep saying, like, it's a great idea, great concept, but we've got to get it past about 100 more finish lines before we're actually going to see it come to fruition. That's kind of where I'd go, I think.
Yep, it's definitely a work in progress. Now we do have Emily from South Haven who submitted a great question about the broader, housing conversation.
Mhm.
She said, short-term rentals are often blamed for the lack of young people and families settling in South Haven, but I think that's short-sighted. So she said, what do you believe are the deeper or more complex reasons behind that trend? And how can the city create a culture that's truly attractive and sustainable for young residents and families?
Hmm. That's a good question. I appreciate the thought of it being short-sighted. I think what short-term rentals have done or contributed to, I won't blame it all on them, is they've contributed to a pretty sharp increase in property values because now all of a sudden a piece of property can be a revenue generating means for an owner. So now in some cases you've got people who own one short-term rental and maybe they bought it to be their retirement home in the future. Great, and that's it. In other cases, we've got people that have 10 plus, and that's more of a business model, right? It's a bit different. But either way, it creates a revenue generating engine that then raises property values because you can get more out of that business, if you will. I do think we need a balance in short-term rentals and how many we have and where they are. I think the new ordinance starts to get there with the overlay district. I think is a good. We're seeing some challenges with the fees, but the city will work through that. It's going to take a minute, but we'll get there. Um, I think that if we want families to be able to come here, they've got to be able to make the money to be able to afford it, right? They've got to have a way to have a revenue or an income level that can afford the home that they're moving into. I don't blame short-term rentals for the lack of families in South Haven, but I think they do contribute to the fact that costs of owning a home in town have gone really high. I think there's other things too. It's hard to build here. When I talk to people who have, I was chatting. I had two really fun residentially based chat sessions this week, and in one, a woman was telling me that her and her family were trying to sponsor a development. This is a while ago, I think before Meyer was there, which is a while ago.
Yeah.
In that space, and the city just made it so complicated that they just pulled out and said no thanks, right? Like we're just not going to do it. And in another conversation, a person building a single family home for themselves said it took over a year and a half to get all of the approvals once you get everything done. And by the time they finally got official approval to go on the build, construction costs had raised 30%. And like that's a big number, especially if you're building a house kind of at your means. And
Yeah.
then you get to that spot and you're like, well, shoot, now I don't have the money to do that. Like that's just it's really challenging. So I think we've got to figure out how we cut some of that red tape and make it easier to build. If we can make it easier to build, then it'll be a little cheaper to build. Um, just because we don't have the time frame that drags the costs up. And so my thought on that is let's dig into these like zoning rules and let's talk to developers. Let's bring them to the table say, why have you vacated South Haven? Why have you been frustrated with South Haven? Like, tell me what the issue was, and then let's go and really think about those issues. Leverage our big teams of boards and commissions that all play a role in these different things, and say, take a look at these ordinances or these rules, these zoning policies that we have, and what can we amend, what can we make easier. There's several communities out there that do, and I'm not saying South Haven goes to this, but it's an idea to look at, that go they do like form-based zoning codes, where if you build this particular structure, like if you build it, not necessarily like it has to look exactly the same, but like we've already pre-approved these things that fit into our communities and fit into our neighborhoods. And so if you stick to these guidelines, you're good to go. Like you don't really like cleared, check, check. We'll come and inspect it a couple times and you're good to go. It makes it super easy, right? So I think we can go with some ideas like that, but I think we got to cut some of that low-hanging fruit of that red tape and see like why people don't want to build here.
Gotcha. And we did have Robert from South Haven, who also asked, what specific strategies do you have in mind to stop the population decline and shift the age demographics in South Haven? And how can we attract more young adults to actually stay and build a life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe we talked at the AAUW forum a couple weeks ago, and someone announced that the average, and this was not me that announced it or researched it, but the average age in South Haven is 61, which is considerably higher than most communities around us, or similar to us. And there is nothing wrong with having an older average age, or older folks in town. We need everybody, but we do need people to be here to put kids in schools, to participate in the economy of South Haven, and to just be to be a part of the thriving community. And I mean, old tape here, but it all stems down to being able to afford to live here, and have a job that makes that happen. I think for me, I want to get in place and think about that 20-year plan, and I want to have a North Star that says we want to have the school population be X by in 20 years, with all of this stuff happening, with this number of families here, however we shape that to be. And then I want to make sure we're ready. So I think South Haven missed the boat, unfortunately, with Palisades coming in, reopening or restarting. I think we're all excited. We're all celebrating every certification they get and every approval and clearance to restart that comes through. We're all excited about it. But we probably should have been excited about it a year and a half ago or 2 years ago and started building houses for those people, right? Because now we've got 600 employees of Palisades that are relocating here from all over the country, and they don't have a place to live in South Haven. They don't have a place to live in the townships. They're moving to other parts around us, and they can't really come into South. Some of them can if they have the income level for it, but we just weren't prepared for it. So we actually missed that boat, and I think it's because we didn't have a strategic plan. That helps us identify those opportunities and plan ahead for them. I think we saw something similar with short-term rentals back in 2016, 17, and 18, when they kind of came on the scene and people got so excited about them, like, yeah, we're all going to have all these short-term rentals. And it was kind of a runaway, right? And then South Haven is now dealing with, oh, we maybe have too many, and we didn't find a balance because we didn't see this North Star of what South Haven is trying to be in this case now 10 years. And so now we're dealing with that gap. So I think, unfortunately, without answering directly the exact answer to that question, I think it's all about having the strategic long-term plan that we have buy-in and vision, and connection to, and it says, okay, this is what South Haven is going to be. And it doesn't have to be, I think the master plan is like, it's a long document. Someone told me, oh, I read the master plan. I was like, you and four other people. Cool. Definitely read it. It's important. But I think we need to have, what's our one pager? What's South Haven's mission? What's our one pager? And sometimes that alone, if young people, young families like mine see that and say, oh, okay, I can align to that, and that's where I want to be, that can also help bring people in and just show that like we're trying. We're pulling in people that have ideas, and we're trying to make those ideas happen in a meaningful way, and we're not spending time on things that maybe don't contribute to that.
Yep. And as we're wrapping up here, is there any, message that you want to really leave with some of the young professionals, emerging leaders, working families that are here in South Haven?
Keep going. Life is short and hard. We get one of these things to do. Um, try every idea that you can. I've gotten pretty lucky in my career path with Target, and I'm really fortunate for that. It was kind of a bit of luck and a bit of some connection. But I think anytime we can take opportunity to connect with organizations like yours, like the business incubators, get a mentor, explore some of those ideas. There's a lot of people out there willing to invest time and money in ideas that are good, and I think South Haven has a lot of space and opportunity for that.
Yep.
Um, I think also we should always be thinking about um, what is my 5 to 10 year plan, right? Personally, and I know this is maybe an old tape now as I'm talking about South Haven's 20-year plan, but like if you don't know where you want to go in 5 to 10 years, then you're probably not really going. Doesn't mean it has to be perfect, but you're probably not really going anywhere. But if you have this idea of like this is the life that I'm envisioning in 5 or 10 years, you can kind of start chipping away at that, and you can better withstand some of the roadblocks and the hardships that'll come your way. But you can kind of start working your way there. By the time you get to that 5 year mark, your plan will have changed, and that's okay because we should revisit these plans every year, right? And it's okay for the plan to change, but at least like you've got this vision and this path, and I think that's probably what I would say. That's a little bit more advice than Josh as mayor, like what would I do? But that's what's worked for me, and put me in a spot where I can take some time and try to get involved, and try to think about how I would help South Haven be a place where when my 6 month old is 18, and Bobby and I are like, okay, it's time for us to go get our second home somewhere else and retire somewhere warm.
Yep.
He wants to stay here and raise his family here and do that kind of stuff. Because I think South Haven has potential for that, and I think we can get there.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Joshua, for taking the
Yeah,
time
Bree.
with me to connect with our community. It means so much. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions, because I think this is what community engagement really looks like.
Mhm. I
So
agree.
if you're watching, please don't forget the South Haven primary election is Tuesday, August 5th. So make your
Go
plan.
vote.
Yes, make your plan to vote, guys. And be sure to stay connected with us at NextGen YBP for more interviews and civic updates. So we'll see you next time.